Okay, welcome back everyone to the second half of the session. Before we move to the next presentation, I would like to thank our sponsor from Enpros, actually from Chile. So let us play the video from Enpros. Okay, thank you very much, Enpros, for supporting or sponsoring our technical session. So next, I would like to invite back again Dr. Frisco. Dr. Frisco, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. May. So we can proceed with our third speaker this afternoon. We will have Mr. Michael Quinn. He is the leader in Excellence in Breeding Program at the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, CIMET. And his topic for this afternoon is breeding innovations for genetic gains in farmers' field. So let's welcome Mr. Michael Quinn for his presentation.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I'll just share my screen here. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Can someone confirm that you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, good, thank you. Pardon me. I'll try not to yell into the microphone. Since living on virtual meetings, my wife complains that I do nothing but yell now. So it's probably got something to do with living with these earbuds in my ears. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you all today. I am assuming that many of you have probably not heard a lot about excellence in breeding, and if you have, then you may not know a lot about us. So I will take the opportunity to introduce what we do and who we are, and I'll try and make the connection to the work that we do with the seed sector, because we really are very much focused on the breeding aspect and the specifically on better breeding and on the more so than on the more downstream component of the seed sector. But obviously there's a strong connection there because the outputs from the breeding program are what feed into the seed sector, and we rely heavily on the seed sector to get the outcomes of our work to farmers, which is what we're all about. Okay, so for a presentation overview, just to let you know what's coming, I'll describe who we are and what we're about, like I mentioned, and for that I'll describe the mission and vision and why we exist and what we do. And in terms of linking with the seed systems, I will describe how we are planning to do a better job of handover of germplasm to the seed sector, how we handle CG NAS networks, which is related to handover of germplasm, our work with defining market segments, and our work with the development of product profiles. So the purpose of excellence in breeding, why does the world need excellence in breeding? We exist to increase the impact of CGIAR and NAS breeding. Excellence in breeding is housed at CIMET. We're hosted by CIMET, but we work with and are there for the benefit of all CG breeding programs and also the national breeding programs, which the CG partner with. So importantly, and unfortunately, the current rates of production increases are not going to meet projected demand. And if I show you this graph here, this shows this point quite nicely. This is using maize and wheat as an example. If you look at the current trend in increase in production, if that were to continue, then we would fall short of where we need to be on this top dotted green line. So that's the difference that we need to make up. We need to increase our production by that much, and this is despite downward pressure from climate change, from nutrient, water and energy scarcity, and diseases, and also other factors like urban sprawl for example. And it's not just the staples, it's also the root, tuber and banana crops and legume crops that are critical for meeting the demands of a growing population and for alleviating poverty, which is what we are wanting to do. So continuing on this, to answer this question, also our key stakeholders are demanding higher rates of genetic gain and faster rates of turnover for farmers. And these key stakeholders are primarily, obviously, the farmers which we serve and the national programs which we're delivering germplasm to, but also the funders which are funding us, which are the Gates Foundation and a range of governments like United States, UK, Germany, Australia, etc. And these funders are really showing a great interest in supporting the CG to deliver these increased rates of genetic gain, which is a really fantastic time to be a part of this, what I'm calling a modernisation initiative for CG breeding. So what's the vision? What's the end goal? What are we aiming for? We're aiming for CG NAS breeding networks that generate rates of genetic gain that are at least 1.5% per annum in the form of farmer preferred varieties. So that means that these production gains will be once in the form of varieties that also have the end use quality and disease package that's required for farmers to adopt them. And that the average aerial weighted age of varieties in farmers' fields is less than 10 years. So this is about turning over varieties faster so that we know that the farmers are growing, having access to the latest technology, and that they're not having to make do with old technology. So that's the higher level vision, and there is a detailed vision for CG breeding at this link, and this slide deck will be made available to all of you. So what's our mission? What do we actually do to achieve this vision? To achieve this vision, we provide system level leadership. And by leadership, I mean we set direction for cross-crop approaches and use of tools and services. And we provide support, again, in the form of tools and services and coordination to the CG and NAS networks. So the way we're structured, we've been running for 3 years, since about mid 2017, just over 3 years. And we are organised in these 5 modules: product design and management, the optimisation of breeding schemes, that's largely a quantitative genetics approach to resource allocation, and then genotyping, phenotyping, and informatics, including bioinformatics, biometrics, and data management. And across all 5 of these, we have a very dedicated we've got dedicated capacity to work with the national programs and to make progress with CG NAS partnerships and to strengthen those partnerships. So since the title of this talk is around innovation, delivering higher rates of genetic gain, I want to take at least this slide to make the point that we achieve this these higher rates of genetic gain by focusing on combining new technology and innovations with excellent execution of the fundamentals of breeding. So just having just focusing on the innovative approaches will not work if it's not built on a solid foundation of well executed fundamentals. So we're really working hard at bringing the two together. And so what does that mean? It means a strong focus on shortening the breeding cycle time. That's a big one, because many breeding cycles will achieve around 10% genetic gain, and they typically take between 10 and 12 years for a breeding cycle. If we can get that down to, say, a 2-year breeding cycle time, we may make some compromises to make that happen. But even if we could still achieve 8% genetic gain, then that will be a year-on-year increase of 4%, up from typically less than 1. So the implications for that for our stakeholders and for the farmers that we serve will be huge. Improved selection of parents. This is a cornerstone of any breeding program, and so we are focused on working with breeding programs to do better in this space. And for all of these objectives, Excellence in Breeding is developing tools and know-how around how to make progress in each of these areas, and that's freely available to any breeding program. And later on in my slide deck, I'll show how to access that. Increased data accuracy, that's just a better trial management, plotmanship. That's an example of the fundamentals. Improved data management. That includes we're building a breeding management system, a database specifically for breeding, including management of genotypic data. Expanding early generation trial networks, looking at the selection of those trial environments in early generations to look at how well they predict for the TPE. Improved biometrics, accurate costing of operations, centralizing operations, and so on. So, I mean, again, an example of where we have tools available, accurate costing of operations. We've got a tool available developed by the University of Queensland that is freely available to help breeding programs to understand what their costs are. So to go in a bit more detail about what we do, I'm going to dive into these 5 areas in the following slides that better link, I guess, are more closely linked with the seed sector and might be of more interest to you listening today. First of all, we work with CG and national programs to work as part of a better partnership, to work in true networks. And the key principles here is that there's clear role separation, but with strong support of one another's role. That NARS are responsible for more downstream and I'm responsible for more upstream work in the breeding pipeline. And NARS scientists are involved to become more heavily involved with final stage selections and gain a sense of ownership of the germplasm, of which they will eventually take over and release to farmers, or work with the seed system to release to farmers. And NARS scientists involved also with setting CG breeding objectives, and this comes down to the product profile development, and I'll talk about product profiles a little later. So to try and give a bit of detail around some of those comments in the form of a diagram. This diagram is fairly busy, so I'm not going to go into all of the detail, but basically what it's saying is that there's the more upstream components of the breeding process, which is donor development, trait integration, and population improvement, which the CGIR will very likely always have a strong role in. And over time, as the national programs we're working with become stronger, many of them are there today already, the vision is that they take on an increasing role in the more downstream components of identifying and extracting varieties for release from those improved populations, and then taking them to the seed systems and ultimately to farmers for adoption and tracking adoption as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, we don't work in the seed sector space, but it is important that we hand over germplasm in a good state and that breeding teams support the seed sector to be successful, because ultimately if the seed sector is not, the seed system isn't successful in delivering outputs of the breeding program to farmers, then it's all for nothing. So this includes ensuring that we deliver high quality and pure seed or stock or whatever it is that we're working with an RTB crop, and high quality performance data supporting investment, so that when we hand over germplasm, we can hand not only over the seed, but also a body of data that says this is worth investing in to a seed system, or for the purpose of influencing policy at the government level. We could be able to approach governments and say, this variety will increase production for your farmers by this amount, and to have the data supporting that. So to achieve that, on-farm testing remains critical, and it's a critical gap right now. It's somewhere we need to do better. So this is something that we are actively trying to address, or working to address. And I guess the key point here is that to remember is that CG programs are not responsible for the final delivery to farmers, but we must make sure that there is an effective pipeline to delivery. Okay, so we're also working in this space of defining market segments and aligning priorities. So really this is about understanding where are the boundaries between the market segments, which of course are data driven, but at some point someone needs to draw a boundary around those for the purpose of mapping the breeding pipelines to specific market segments so that they can be targeted. And great efforts are being made right now to better understand the specific market segments targeted by CG breeding. And this includes a better understanding about the farmers and consumers in these market segments. And that will ultimately lead to the development of a breeding pipeline investment case or some sort of a value proposition for each of those breeding pipelines by understanding who it is that we're breeding for and a little bit about their situation, such as their depth of poverty and the number of farmers, number of hectares, number of tonnes, and value of production. This is the sort of thing that the private sector that effectively drives their decisions. And going forward, it's likely to have a bigger influence on driving investment decisions in CG breeding. And it'll be different to what the drivers will, of course, be very different to in the private sector. We're looking at poverty alleviation and ending hunger and the sustainable development goals. Okay, so closely linked to that is the development of product profiles. So each, and this is where there's a really tight link with the seed sector, because seed sector also have product profiles, and these really should be the same product profile because the market should be required. I mean, the market signals should be telling us the same thing about what is required in the marketplace. And so for the seed sector, they need to know this information to make decisions on what to take to market. For the breeding program, we need to know what it is that we need to develop. And so we need to invest in having well-developed product profiles, which will in turn guide breeding objectives and decisions around parental choices and promotion of germplasm. So each breeding pipeline will develop well-defined product profiles and that describe the products that will be developed. And so it should be a description of what it will take to be successful in any particular market segment. And so this puts focus on replacing varieties in the marketplace and reducing average age of varieties in farmers' fields. So we should be strongly guided by having a look at what farmers are breeding now, what they're growing now, and what it would take to have them adopt a new variety, and understanding that so that we can ultimately replace that variety with something better so that they're always growing something better. This creates an opportunity to align market needs with breeding objectives. And so being for all of you in the room to be aware that this is happening, I think is useful and hopefully useful, and I think important because of this opportunity to gain alignment between market needs and breeding objectives. And many of you that are working in the same market segments as these breeding programs that we're working with will hopefully have an opportunity to have input into the development of these product profiles. The production traits need to be included as part of a product profile. So that's just, I mean, this is a question that comes up regularly, and the answer is yes. And the outcome of all of this will be more targeted breeding. That's the goal here, and a greater focus and greater efficiency and effectiveness. We also have a strong push on genotyping. We're supporting breeding programs to do more genotyping as part of that goal of increasing genetic gain. And we do this in a number of ways, but one of the most effective ways we do it is through brokering access to low-cost genotyping as a shared service. So we've set up this service, and this is widely accessible, including to the seed sector, including to private companies. And in fact, by utilising this, it's actually a win-win, because the more volume that we can create, the more it drives the cost down for everybody, because it is a volume-dependent cost reduction. And anyone who's interested in accessing this, I've put an email address there for you to send to. So there are many outputs that we have. That's not the genotype is not many in addition to that, and many of them linking to those objectives that I ran through early in the presentation. If you'd like to see a little more detail about them, then go to that website at the top there, excellenceinbreeding.org. We also have a toolbox which you can navigate through that website, which is where you find all the tools, documents, and know-how documents which we have. And there's also a direct link to that. And all of these tools and outputs are freely available, including to private sectors. So any of you that are partnering with breeding programs that you think might be interested, please let them know about this. Or if there are any breeders in the audience today, then also, or researchers. So we also recently, just 2 weeks ago, had our annual meeting, which many of you wouldn't have had the opportunity. We pretty much invited CG and NAS breeding scientists, and so many of you may not have had an opportunity to attend, but it was all recorded and it is all available. And so if you would like to understand more about what we do or what we have on offer, or what you might be able to, how you might be able to link with us, or how you might be able to benefit from some of the outputs, then you'll either find it at our website or through looking at some of these presentations, which are all on YouTube now. So yeah, please feel free to access that. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for your time. It's the most valuable thing you can give. So I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. Thank you very much. Thanks, Kuna.
Yan mga sana doon sa chat ba, sa Q&A. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Quinn, for your nice presentation. I think we have one question here in the Q&A. Is Excellence in Breeding also looking into new breeding technology such as genome editing?
Good question. We are involved in that conversation, but we're not actively working that area. We're more working with fundamental and hardcore breeding, but we acknowledge that we very much acknowledge the value of that biotechnology brings, including gene editing and GM and all related technologies, and we seek to partner closely with those scientists to bring the benefits to farmers.
Dr. Frisco, you are on mute.
Okay. Yeah, we have another question here. Have you set up a decision-making procedure to advance varieties to the next stage and release them?
That's a great question. The answer is that I guess there's two parts to this answer. One is that we're developing a stage gate system. We have made some progress with this, but it is still in development in terms of the finer details. So yes, we have. Yes, we are still fine tuning it, and it's part of a stage gate system. And one of the key components to what we're promoting is to have a formal advancement meeting where we get all relevant stakeholders together to make those final stage decisions about what gets released. And so the other part to this question is around what I was presenting in terms of a CG NAS network, where we're really promoting greater involvement of the national breeding program scientists to be a part of that process, including the advancement meeting, along with the seed sector to have input and ultimately also have greater level of ownership of the decision and of the germplasm that finally gets released. So yes, we are working very much in that space. We have procedures already developed, and we're still doing that. And I think Bish Das, who is our national NAS coordinator, is the person to talk to about that.
We have another question here. How is the private partnership handled?
Yes, this is, if I assume that this question is about how do we work with the private sector to achieve our outcomes and our goals, and how do we partner with them? So for excellence in breeding, our goal is not really the breeding. Our goal is to work with the breeding teams to have better breeding. So I guess this question could be interpreted in terms of how do we partner, how does private sector partner with the breeding program specifically, or with excellence in breeding. With excellence in breeding, we are partnering with a number of private sector companies, including some big ones like Bayer and Corteva. And on that front, we're working directly with breeding programs, CG and NAS breeding programs, and with these private sector companies. And we're leveraging the know-how and the tools and services that the private companies can bring for the benefit of those breeding programs. If the question is around how does private sector partner with the breeding teams themselves, that is, we are looking to do that, but the specific answer is going to be different depending on what crop you're talking about, because the private sector is obviously more involved in some crops than others, like you look between, say, cassava and maize. So it's a little bit difficult to answer that in a high level, holistic way.
Okay, I think that's a good answer to that question. Another one, is excellence in breeding focused for hybrid development and genetic gain?
Yes, we're most certainly focused on genetic gain. That's really our whole thing. And this includes for hybrid crops. And so for fixed line crops, like and for clonal crops, then obviously no. But for crops like maize, then yeah, absolutely. And some market segments are going to be have better absorption capacity for hybrids than others. So sometimes the focus will be on hybrids, sometimes it'll be on OPVs, sometimes like if you go to look at, say, millets or sorghum, in some market segments, they're still growing fixed lines. And so we're looking at a transition period in terms of how do we deliver higher quality fixed lines whilst we're getting the hybrid market more developed.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Michael Quinn, for your very nice presentation and your answers to the questions. I think we don't have much time for other questions. Again, thank you very much. So we will proceed.
My pleasure.
The next.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Dr. May, I will proceed to the next topic.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Michael Quinn. I totally agree with Dr. Frisco that you have brought very good view about EIB. So next, I think many members would like to know the activities of special interest group on field crops, because since we just formed this group of actually 10 companies already formed this group, and so I think they have set really good scope and also the goals. And so here Dr. Frisco will share with us the goal and the scope and what would be the key priorities of this group. With that, I would like to invite Dr. Frisco to share the activity of SIG field crops.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, just to give you a short background on the APSA key priorities, these are the things. We have intellectual property right and plant variety protection, including biodiversity, trading of quality seed, public and private partnerships, internal and external communication, and as to the APSA structure, of course, we have these members, General Assembly, the Executive Committee, and we have we have standing committee, and we have the special interest group where the special interest group on field crops is included. Next, please. This is the mission and the goals of the special interest group on field crops. Develop knowledge center for general information, discuss issues and work with relevant government bodies, international seed associations and local seed associations to address issues and opportunities relevant to integrated field crops companies operating in Asia and Pacific region. So the aim is to provide services to APSA field crops company members to be able to strengthen small farmers, growers, and farmer society in Asia and the Pacific region. So in here we have, of course, breeding technologies, the intellectual property protection and variety protection, harmonizing seed laws, seed regulations among the countries in Asia Pacific. Then we have the phytosanitary regulations to facilitate the movement of seeds, which is very important for the members of the Asia and Pacific Seed Association members. Then we have the market development opportunity. That's why we are looking at other countries whom were these APSA members can also focus on marketing their matured products. And lastly, best practices sharing on seed production, processing, seed technology, and innovation. So the focus of the special interest group on field crops include field corn. We have, of course, rice that includes both conventional and hybrid rice. We have cotton, sorghum, pearl millets, and oil crops. To name a few, we have soybean, mustard, canola, sunflower, and other field crops. Next, please. I would like to recognize the new membership of the special interest group on field crops. So as chairman, I'm currently the chairman representing the SL Agritech Corporation from the Philippines. And then of course we have the co-chair from Greenwald Genetics, Dr. Chua Kim Ike. And then we have the members from Wuhan Kingfa Hessian Seed Company Limited, Ms. Xiaobu Xu. We have a representative from Syngenta Asia Pacific, Mr. Hardip Griwal. Then from Corteva Agri-Science, Mr. Mark Cool. From Seedworks International, we have Mr. Ben Katram Basan Tabada. Of course, we have also from Advanta Seed, United Phosphorus Limited Group, Mr. Bupen Dube. From Lima Grain, Thailand, it is Lima Grain Company Limited, Mr. Dipankar Baisha. From Anhui Pengda Seed Company Limited, Ms. Chang Jing. And lastly, we have from Chowren Pokpan Produce Company Limited, Dr. Sadawud Kun Mani. Thank you very much for joining the special interest group on field crops, and thank you for sharing your time in this very specific, very important special interest group. Okay, so we have several meetings conducted during the last several months. And as to the activities this year of the special interest group on field crops, in relation to intellectual property right and plant variety protection, we have the code of conduct, train the trainer course on plant breeders, what is it? Plant variety protection and plant breeders right. And then trading of quality seeds globally. Of course, we're talking here of the impact of the COVID-19 survey on seed trade. I think every members of the Asia and the Pacific Seed Association were affected by this COVID for the last several months. Another activity is on public-private partnership. This is in relation to the collaboration with the UPOG on PVP and PBR training. Another new activity of the SIG field crops is on the policy development, and this is in relation to the Philippine setup wherein the Department of Agriculture is looking at having a local seed policy on hybrid rice seed production, I think including hybrid corn. And this is in the process of discussion with the private sector in the Philippines as well as the Department of Agriculture. Another one is on the operational excellence. And this is what I have mentioned. We have new members of the field crops starting August 2020. And in relation to communications, we have this database for the special interest groups and standing committees, minutes and discussion points for APSA members. And the other one is events updated on APSA social media, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So these are the different activities this year of the special interest group on field crops. By the way, these are some of the participants who attended the Train the Trainers program. This is the first one is the first topic was plant breeders right and plant variety protection. The program was successfully organized by UPOB and APSA. 61 participants, 19 from SIG field crops and 42 from the working committee joined during the October to 6 to 8 training. And out of 61 participants, 57 participants passed the exam and received the trainer's certificate. Congratulations to all those who passed the examination on this specific training program. As to the specific of this policy development, SIG field crop members agreed to propose Asian Pacific Seed Association to draft talking points to respond to the presentation of the Rice Productivity Advocacy Incorporated, or Rice Board, Philippines, to the Department of Agriculture on the localization of seed production in the Philippines. APSA submitted the talking points to the Rice Board in this month, and these are the key messages sent to the Rice Board. One is in terms of climate in the Philippines, which affected, of course, the success of the hybrid rice seed production. The second one is the availability of the needed infrastructure for hybrid rice seed production. I think in relation to this, the Department of Agriculture or the government can help the industry in having this, in putting up this in infrastructure. But of course, we are expecting the private sector to add investment on these facilities. The number 3 message is in relation to the intellectual property protection policy. And number 4 is in terms of skilled manpower and partnership. By the way, in terms of number 4 message, the Philippines actually trained many prospective farmer growers and the partner agencies of the Department of Agriculture in relation to the hybrid rice seed production. But of course, I think before, the national government program is not sustained. But right now, with the leadership of our highly qualified Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary William Dar, we can pursue the massive manpower development as well as establishing partnership between the Department of Agriculture and the private sector when it comes to hybrid rice commercialization. And for the information of the members, right now in the Philippines, we are lucky that this cropping season, last cropping season, wet season, we were able to plant close to 600,000 hectares to hybrid rice nationwide. And all the private companies participated in this program. And this dry cropping season, which started already, we are looking at 800,000 hectares to be planted to hybrid rice. And that is why the current Secretary of Agriculture is looking at having this policy on local seed production because we would like to sustain the availability of high quality hybrid rice seeds in the Philippines and not totally dependent on importing these hybrid rice seeds, say for example from India or from China. So we will finalize this manpower, and as a matter of fact, tomorrow we will be having the meeting because the meeting last November 19 didn't materialize because of the not good weather. So that is in relation to the policy development activity of the special interest group on field crops. As to the database for the SIGs and standing committees, minutes and discussion points for APSA members, these are I think that the things that the SIGs and the standing committee documents can access. 2020 activities, 2019, 2018, 2017 activities, we can access that in our ABSA website. Okay, so I think that's all for the activities of the special interest group on field crops this year. Thank you very much. And I think we can hear from my co-chair, Dr. Chua, to present the session summary. Dr. Chua?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have gone through a few very interesting paper. Food security have been one of the most discussed topic globally, and in fact, it's one of the national agenda for most of the countries. And the major items in the food baskets for food security are maize, rice, and wheat. To attain food security in the growing population and scarcity of land, we need to grow less for more. So we have less land, but we need to produce more food. So in order to achieve this, I think we have to depend very much on the expert and their innovations and the research and technology. So today we have a very good sections that we have three very interesting and contributing papers, which is addressing the problem that which I mentioned just now. They have new technologies and new tools. I think for this, Dr. Prasanna have mentioned about this, one of the biggest challenges for the last few months in South Asia about the fall armyworms problem. I think it was started before 2016. It will not happen in this region, and it started to have this in last few months. And we are great to learn that they have a new varieties and the resistant gene that resistant to this FAW. That's very good, which I think that that will help a lot in the food productivities and also this disease problem and also the safer chemicals. And also we have to thank Professor Hypings and come up with the new technologies and the new tools that we can be able to identify the markers in a very short period and also in a more accurate and then also more efficient. I think this will help a lot in speed up the development of new product and also the cost of development these markers. And also, we are also very happy to see that Michael had presented a paper on these breedings on the new products and also these shellings of the germplasm. So with all this, I think we see a good opportunity for us to develop and speed up the development of this industry in this region. I think once again, we take this opportunity to thank the speakers for sharing with us the news and the technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chua and Dr. Frisco, actually. So I think we have we receive very good information, and after that, I think the SIG Field Crop Committee can take all the comments also, and the questions from the participants to take to form also the forum for public-private partnership moving forward with these organizations. So with that, I would like to thank also all the committees, all the speakers who joined in the session today, and definitely our participants who stay with us until the end of this session. So with that, I would like to close the session, and next we are going to the last section of the APSA virtual technical session of SIG Vegetable Ornamental, which will be start in the next hour. So
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. May, and everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.